Hello and welcome to another episode of Paris of the Plains. This is the Wheeler Home Team. My name is Jalen Wong.
And this is Chris Wheeler.
And Paris of the Plains exists to enrich Kansas City through real estate. And today we have Sheriff Will Akin. Will, thanks for being here with us. Thanks for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah.
Well, we know that this series that we're in right now is titled Life and Liberty, and we're really targeting the residents, the potential future residents of Liberty, Missouri, and that's where you call home, right?
Absolutely. Been living here for almost 10 years. Actually, December 1st of this year, so what, in a couple weeks?
Yeah.
We'll make exactly 10 years to the day.
Okay. And what brought you out here into this area?
So former Sheriff Paul Vescovo. I tell you, I was telling Chris, yes. Oh my gosh, sorry guys. Chris and Jalen. I was telling Chris a little while ago that I've moved 38 times in 47 years, lived in 10 states and 3 countries.
Wow.
And so former Sheriff Paul Vescovo and I were actually contractors in Afghanistan.
Okay.
And we were working in the Family Response Unit, and we would help investigators work crimes against women and children, gender rights violations, and human rights violations. And one day he came up to me and he was like, "Hey, Will," he goes, "I'm leaving contract early, and I'm going to go back home and run for sheriff again."
Okay.
He had already done 8 years as sheriff, lost to his opponent in 2008, so that's where the break was. And I looked at him, I was like, "Well, good for you, man. I hope you win." He goes, "No, if I win, I want you to come out and work with me." And I go, "Effing Missouri?" So that's that. I was just like, no,
Where were you at the time?
Columbus, Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah, and
I mean, is Columbus that much better than KC?
I tell you, I love KC now.
Yeah.
But back then it was like no way, because when I was in the military, it was misery.
Yeah.
Fort Lost in the Woods, misery, right? So I've never been here, but it was just that reputation.
Yeah.
And he was like, no. He goes, "If I win, I want you to come out." And I was like, "Look, man," I was like, I'm climbing the corporate ladder with the company that we were working with, and I want to stay here. And at that time, I was there for almost 2 years.
Okay.
And so he left, and for the next year, he kept working on me. And he was like, "Hey, Will," he goes, "have you given it any more thought?" And I was like, "No."
So he won.
Not yet. So
Okay.
he's running at this point now.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I said, "Look, I'll come out and I'll visit." So my wife and I, we came out here from Columbus, Ohio. And we spent like 4 days here, and we brought our mountain bikes, okay, because we love the mountains. But we also saw that there was some single track trails out here and stuff, and we're going to give it a shot.
Yeah.
So we drive out here, and I look at my wife when we finally got here, and I'm like, this is not like what I thought.
Yeah.
I thought Kansas. You could see for like 100 miles.
Yeah.
And it was very, the terrain here is awesome. And so we went mountain biking over like in Stocksdale in Liberty. And Paul showed us around Kansas City, took us like to Union Station, took us to Jack Stack. Like that's like the barbecue place that.
So you were getting recruited.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Big time.
So we left. And on the way back, I told my wife, I was like, "Man, I think we seriously need to reconsider this." And she goes, "Well, okay, we'll see." And so I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks later, we saw in Money Magazine, like we don't look at Money Magazine, but somehow this article came in front of us, and it said the top 10 schools in the country.
Whoa.
And Liberty was number 7.
Wow.
And we still had 2 kids in school at the time. And it was like that, like that's too much of a sign to pass up. So we talked about it a little bit more. And so finally I called Paul and I said, "Look, if you win," I was like, "I'll move out there and I'll work with you. But I have to make, X amount of dollars. These are the things that I want to do." And he's like, "If I win," he goes, "I'll take care of everything."
That's awesome.
And long story short, he won. And on December 1st of 2012, we moved out here.
Okay.
Uprooted the family and came over here with, just a little bit of what we had.
What was your role at the time when you came here?
When I came here, I was a lieutenant in field operations.
Okay.
So I had dispatch, crime analysis, property and evidence, emergency management, and public relations and media relations.
Okay. That's a lot on your plate.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Especially to make this salary work, we're going to have to give you some extra job responsibilities.
Yes. And I tell you, man, like it was a lot of money for the organization, but I almost took $100,000 pay cut.
Wow.
To come out here. So I was committed to him. We worked together for 6 months straight. in the middle of Kabul, and when there's explosions happening and single vehicle convoys and just bad things happening, I mean, you kind of grow, this bond, a very strong bond. So it wasn't easy. I mean, we kind of tied things up and just made ends meet the best we could, and we committed to it.
Well, imagine a guy in his position as a leader. He's looking for people that he can trust, someone that he can delegate to and say, hey, these things will be managed really well, and someone that will be loyal to me, right?
Absolutely.
And so you guys were in the trenches together doing battle. It's like, what other better brother can I have than Will Akin?
The level of trust is, I mean, I can't even describe it. I respect him wholeheartedly. Endearingly, I call him Pops because he's several years older than I am. But there would be times where, I mean, obviously I'm a good soldier, right? And so if he says we need to do this, then I'm like, Roger that, sir, we're moving on. But sometimes he would make decisions or something would happen. I'd have to go to his office, close the door, and I'd be like, what the F are you thinking?
Yeah.
Because I was his senior over in Afghanistan. Okay. Like I had been in country a lot longer. And so
that's funny.
I still had that, we got to have a talk.
Yeah.
But I didn't have to do that very often.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I'm sure because of your guys' relationship, you felt comfortable doing that though too.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Right. And he probably received that well with, I mean, this is some criticism, but he's taken it.
And and I always did it behind closed doors because our relationship wasn't like anything that anyone else had with him. And I didn't want anyone to think that I was demeaning his position or demeaning him. It was more of a, I'm looking out for you, but we need to have a real frank conversation.
Sure. Yeah. It's interesting you brought up the school district being ranked number 7 in the country. That is a constant, reoccurring theme. Everyone that we've brought on, we've had Dr. Tucker, the superintendent. Obviously, he's going to, maybe have a little bit of bias, but the other people have all said the exact same thing. Like, we love the school district. So part of your guys' reason for coming to Liberty was you saw it was ranked top in the country, and you felt like, hey, that's a great place for us to raise a family. Our kids are going to get a good education. Talk to us a little bit about the education that you ended up getting for your kids. Was it what you expected? Did it exceed expectations?
Oh gosh, it exceeded expectations. So our middle son and our youngest son went through Liberty School District, but they ended up in Liberty North High School. But we also had them in private school before we moved out here because the schools weren't all that great where we came from.
Yeah.
And I just remember coming out here, meeting the teachers and the principals, and then just through different activities, meeting them on a different level. And I was just like, man, this place is really awesome. And so we had a great experience. My kids, they ended up doing cross country, wrestling, track. So they were really involved with the schools. But now my middle son, he joined the Army right out of high school. Tripped me out because all 3 of my boys were like, Dad, never are we going to join the military. That was all you. And then he ends up joining the military as an infantryman.
Okay.
And I'm like, what are you thinking? Like, I just don't even understand this. Did 3 years in the Army, 1 tour in Iraq, and now he's a nursing student at Columbia College in Columbia, Missouri.
Oh, very cool.
So that's what he wanted to do. But he felt like, he told me, he said, Dad, he goes, I hear you tell all your stories. And he goes, and I want stories of my own.
Yeah, I've heard you say that before. I don't know if it was on a podcast.
Yeah.
But I remember you telling these stories, and your son was just so engaged by it. He's like, I want to be able to tell stories like that.
Yes.
That's cool.
And it was really funny. And as kind of a side note, when he was in Iraq, we would talk, and he would complain a lot, being stuck in the tower for 16 hours. And, he's right on the Syrian border. And I'm listening to him the whole time. And I said, but guess what, son? He goes, what's that? And I go, you're making stories. So he's doing really well now. He's in his 3rd year. He's a transfer student from Mizzou, so he's got a little bit of extra time. But he'll go back into the military and finish out his career as a nurse. And his goal is to be a nurse practitioner.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
And and then my youngest son, he graduated a year early as a junior this year.
Okay.
And he just joined the Missouri Air National Guard as a jet engine mechanic and got accepted to Missouri S&T.
Oh, wow.
And will start next fall. He took a gap year to go into aerospace engineering and dual major with mechanical engineering.
Wow.
And I tell you, man, Liberty School District set them up for success.
That's awesome.
Their teachers, the curriculum. I mean, I think I had to stop helping my kids at the 8th grade with their math. And they're like, Dad, but you're a doctor. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not that kind of doctor. I can think abstractly. I'm not anything like that. So they're doing really well.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
That's awesome.
How did the teachers and the staff help your children? Can you give some tangible stories? I know we've had podcast guests who have just given story after story after story of like, hey, I remember this one time where my kid was either struggling in this, or is there something that really kind of sticks out to you?
You know, I think mostly what sticks out to me most is not a particular teacher or a story, other than the fact that teachers were always there for my kids. And I would like to think that all teachers are there for all of our kids in the Liberty School District and quite frankly, all the school districts. But I know that's not the case. But I know that for me, I'm confident in saying that the student or the teachers that my kids had, they were always there for them. And I remember, I can't remember what class it was, but it was in 2016. I was invited to Liberty North High School to talk with the AP group that was reading a book called A Thousand Sons, I believe. And it's about two girls in Afghanistan. And they were wives, but one was a mother and one was a daughter, not related to each other.
Okay.
But my son said, well, my dad was in Afghanistan. And so they invited me over, and it turned into me telling stories about my experience in Afghanistan, and then into preservation and perseverance and, about life.
Yeah.
And I remember one of those teachers sent me a message on Facebook Messenger, years later, and she goes, I don't know if you know this, but we've had so many students in our class that joined the military because of you.
Wow.
I was like, holy cats. But so teachers were always there, but I'm still personal friends with their teachers.
Okay.
Some are still teaching, some have moved on. And, it makes me feel really good about the teachers that are in the Liberty School District because I would say a vast majority of them are just genuine and they want to be there for the kids.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I want to dive a little bit into your career, because I feel like that's so much of who you are today, right? The person, Will Akin, how you became sheriff. And so you talked a little bit about you grew up in California, and at 18 you left. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so let's kind of backtrack and let's start there. Walk us through that journey of being 18 years old and what's next for Will Akin, and kind of walk us through the road of how that got you to this point.
Yeah. So I'll back up just a little bit more to add context.
Perfect.
My dad left when I was 3. Born in Southern California, we moved up to the San Jose, Santa Clara area where we ended up being homeless for 2 years. We were living in our car. And then we ended up in Bakersfield. But even though we weren't living on the streets anymore, it just got better a little bit.
Yeah.
Dropped out of high school when I was 16 years old. I was working 3 jobs to help support my mom and my brother. And it wasn't until an acquaintance of mine shot a guy to steal his motorcycle where I reflected and I was like, what am I doing? Like, I'm going nowhere really fast, because that's the circles that I was hanging out with. Even though I wasn't doing what they were doing, I would have gotten in just as much trouble.
Sure.
So I went back and I got my GED and joined the Army and vowed never to go back. So that was 1994. Spent 8.5 years in the Army. When I was 26 years old, I was diagnosed with adult onset asthma, and they told me I had to get out. And the reason why they said I had to get out is because I was a UH-60 Black Hawk helicopter pilot. And that devastated my world.
Yeah, I bet.
So that's how I got into law enforcement. But here's the kicker. We didn't like cops when I was growing up. I never dreamed of being in law enforcement. When the cops showed up in our neighborhood, we ran. There was no community policing.
Sure.
And so I just remember thinking to myself, I have to be a cop. Like, I never wanted to get out of the military.
Yeah.
I'd still be in today.
So you envisioned a long career in there.
Oh, yeah. 35 years is what I could have maxed out at.
Okay.
And I just remember thinking to myself, man, like, I have to have a job. I have a family to support.
Yep.
And I kind of thought about going to a couple of, little companies and stuff like that, but I was like, that's not going to work. So Phoenix Police Department in Arizona was hiring, and they picked me up. And that's how I got into law enforcement. And I've been in law enforcement for almost 20 years now, and I'm so glad I did it.
That's cool. My grandpa was a chief of police if you know where El Dorado, Kansas is, it's right next to Wichita, about 30 minutes.
Sure.
And so he was the chief of police until he's, I think, 55. And back then, it was a small enough town. It's like 20,000 people. He also served as the fire chief as well.
Wow. Yeah.
So he kind of had both roles, then transitioned just to full-time police chief. So we have a lot of familiarity there.
That's cool. That's cool.
So you're in Phoenix, and then how did you end up in Ohio so that you could come
Yeah.
here? So you said you moved 30-something times, right?
A lot of those times were when we were homeless, just
Okay.
trying to,
Yeah.
I mean, because, it still gets cold in California.
It does, yeah.
So instead of living on the streets, we had to find places to live, and sometimes we would live in people's garages.
Okay.
But when I say live, we were living in the back of our station wagon.
Okay. Wow.
So we would just park in the garage, and then
Yeah.
we'd sleep in the car.
Yeah.
So 5 years with Phoenix PD, that was, wow. That's like the foundation of what I think of law enforcement being busy. It was just extremely busy out there compared to what we have out here.
Oh, I bet.
And so life happens, got divorced. I'm in law enforcement, military guy, not immune to the struggles of maintaining a marriage.
Yeah, I'm sure that's hard.
Yeah. Got divorced. My kid's mom ended up moving to Indiana.
Okay.
And, we were 2,000 miles apart. And I just remember I wanted to be there for my kids because I didn't have a dad growing up.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, so made the decision to leave Phoenix PD to go to South Bend, Indiana, and was a cop in South Bend. I was a cop there for a year. Whoa, that was like taking a step back in time, man. It was 2008, and they were still dropping the N-word in briefing.
Wow.
As like a regular part of their vocabulary. They were being investigated by the FBI. They were getting ready to get a consent decree. I mean, it was just
The police department.
The police department. And from what I understand, it hasn't gotten any better. A lot of my friends have left. Some are still there, and they're doing well. So I would like to think that it got better. But
And you said South Bend?
South Bend.
That's really shocking to me. I mean, that's Notre Dame.
Yes.
I'm thinking a highly populated Catholic community.
Wow.
Indiana surprised me because I lived in Georgia and Alabama for 6 years when I was in the military, and there was racism down there. Coming from California, it's like the melting pot.
Yeah.
I didn't really know what racism was. I mean, I knew what color was. I'm not blind, but not until I went to South Bend when I started seeing, like, in the back roads in small towns with 4x8 sheets of plywood painted that says, if you're not white when the sun goes down, you better not be in town.
Right.
Wow.
And I'm just like, man, this is the 21st century.
Yeah.
I just don't understand this. So I couldn't stay there. It was just a very different culture for me. So I went to Afghanistan instead.
Okay.
Much
A
better
little more
place.
diverse.
Spent 3 years in Afghanistan. First year I was there working with police chiefs, Afghan police chiefs. That was really a waste of time. Really, all they were warlords in their districts, and they had a little bit of money, so now they're the police chiefs. So it's not, law enforcement over there is not like what we have over here. Yeah. So I left there and ended up working with the Family Response Unit. And I tell you, the investigators that worked crimes against women and children, gender rights violations, and human rights violations, that was the most fulfilling time of my entire experience in Afghanistan. And that's because they were educated, they loved their country, and they were doing it for the right reasons. And also, many of them spoke English, so there wasn't that language barrier, and we could understand really what was going on. And then my third contract there, did a lot of convoy protection, personnel protection, executive protection.
Okay.
And finally, our company was going through a RIF, a reduction in force.
Yeah.
And my buddy comes up to me. He's like, man, he goes, I'm on the RIF list. He goes, I can't leave right now. And I was like, well, I'm not, and I'm ready to go home.
Yeah.
So I said, I'll take your spot. And he stayed.
Nice.
He was like, are you serious? You'd do that for me? I was like, absolutely. I was like, I'm done. Just like Forrest Gump. I'm done. I'm going home now.
Wow. So where was home for you at that time? Did you come back to South Bend, or did you?
No. So another reason why I left South Bend is because I got my second divorce.
Okay.
And all I had to my name was my truck, my bike, 6 Walmart tote bins, and 2 duffel bags.
Wow.
So all that was in a storage shed in Wabash, Indiana.
Man. Is this divorce? Was it kind of a similar theme for you? Just because you're so far apart, you're in another country. Was that part of the challenge?
No, I think it's. I was in the military. I was a cop. My first wife was in the military, and she was a cop. My second wife was a cop in the military. My third wife and final wife has never been in law enforcement, has never been in the military, and we're doing phenomenally well.
That's awesome. That's good to hear.
Wow. So, South Bend. So, how did you get from there to Ohio? Is it just because you were moving around the Midwest?
No. So my wife and I, my wife now, and I, we actually met online. And she was living in Columbus, Ohio.
Wow.
And, I got to a point where I was like, okay, I think I'm ready to get back into another relationship. And so I got online, fitnesssingles.com.
Okay.
And I met her. And it was like a month later, we met. I was on there for about a month, and we met about 3 weeks into it. And then both of us canceled our accounts after a week.
Wow.
And the next 2 years of our relationship was all spent communicating. We were 7,000 miles apart. And so it was really, our relationship now is built on a foundation of communication. So whenever there's an issue, man, it's so easy to talk about it.
Yeah.
And so I moved all my stuff from Wabash, Indiana to Columbus, Ohio, where, I trusted her that, probably a couple months into it. And I said, here's my life. I'm putting my life in your hands. And she accepted the responsibility, and that's how I ended up in Columbus, Ohio.
Wow, that's a crazy story.
Oh man, it was crazy living it.
So with this whole kind of theme of just like almost kind of being a nomad, right? Like transferring from here to here to here to here to here. You seem to have found like 10 years in Liberty, Missouri, right?
Yes.
Like is that unusual for you? Are you at this point in your life where you're like, hey, this is home long term? I'm here.
We've planted roots here. So we've been here for almost 10 years. The longest place I've ever lived was Bakersfield, California, and that was about 8 years. So this is the longest place, or the one place that I've lived the longest. Not only that, but working at the Clay County Sheriff's Office is the one job that I've worked the longest now in my life. I was in the Army for 8.5 years. I've been here for almost 10. And, moving here, again, was the best move personally and professionally. So I said I dropped out of high school, got my GED to join the Army.
Yeah.
When I was in the Army, I got my associate's degree, which allowed me to go to flight school. When I was in Afghanistan, 13 years later, sometimes the threat level would be so high that we would never be able to leave our compound for like a month at a time.
Wow.
And so I was just sitting there, like after watching my 8th pirated movie, which was not a big deal over there.
Yeah.
I'd be watching movies over there 6 months before you guys ever got to see it in the theaters. But I was laying there and I was like, man, I have my GI Bill. I'm wasting my time. What am I doing? So found a college in California Coast University, online program, and I was able to finish my bachelor's degree.
Okay.
And then I was like, man, school's kind of easy now. So I just went straight into my master's program and got an MBA.
Same place, or?
Yeah, same place. And then I was done until I came out here. Well, now I have a master's degree. Doors of opportunities that continue to open up. And one of them was with Mid-American Nazarene University.
Okay. Down in Olathe, right?
Yeah. Well, they used to have a site in Liberty over there by Chick-fil-A in the Lake Brink building between Discount Tire and Chick-fil-A. And so I got started there and started teaching adult learners. And I was like, man, this is awesome. Because I wanted to be a teacher.
Okay.
Until I went to a seminar early on in college. And after 15 minutes of listening to that, I was like, no,
yeah, I'm out.
Mad respect for K through 12 teachers. I could not do it. But I started teaching MNU, and I finally started thinking, man, like if I want, I'm in the perfect place to go back and get my doctorate. So ended up going to Olivet Nazarene University from 2017 to 2020 and finally graduated with my doctorate in education with a concentration in ethical leadership. And that was like the ultimate closure. So I was finally going to be able to walk until COVID struck.
Oh, no.
I have graduated 5 times and I've never walked across the stage.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
For one reason or another. And I was devastated because that was supposed to be like the ultimate closure. Believe it or not, Courier Tribune did a story in their newspaper. California Coast University, apparently I think they were mentioned, and so they picked up on it. Well, they sent me a letter and said, if you're ever in California, we will make a special presentation
cool.
for you to walk across the stage.
Sweet.
I was like, oh my god.
Did you do it? Have you done it?
No, not yet, but
Okay.
I'm going to definitely take them up on it. But yeah, just doors of opportunity and liberty. With that and being heavily involved in the education world, which I'm a high school dropout, man. I was like, I hate school.
Yeah.
For different reasons, but also for me professionally. In 2015, Mosby flooded, and we had to do some water rescues. There's hardly anything left in Mosby today. But I was the one that ran that incident, the flooding incident. And for like 18 hours straight, I was outside coordinating with all of our regional partners, other agencies within Clay County. And when that happened, the commission, they were going through some changes, and they asked the sheriff if he would be willing to take emergency management over. So I was just a liaison. And long story short there, I ended up being the director of emergency management for Clay County and for the next 6 years. So every natural and man-made disaster that happened in Clay County, I was there.
Wow. So that Mosby incident really created an opportunity for you to kind of shine, and like, wow, Will's just killing it out there. Let's make him director.
Right? Okay. And I'm like, yeah. Oh my gosh, what am I doing?
Wow. So when you got your doctorate of education, your EDD, right? What did you write about? What interested you in your dissertation? Like, how did you? Because you have such a diverse background.
Yeah.
Right. So like, what was the one thing that you were like, I'm so passionate about this that I'm going to write over 100 pages or 200 pages about this?
Oh my gosh, man, it was so much writing, and I failed every English class in high school. I just want to point that out.
Yeah.
So it ended up being like 149 pages.
Yeah.
But the reason why I chose my topic, which was multi-generational perceptions of the law enforcement work environment, is because now I'm a captain in the sheriff's office, and the younger generations are coming in. But I kept hearing in the hallways, those damn millennials. And I kept thinking to myself, man, is it really the millennials? Like, what is it so, why are they so bad? And now I point out to people, I'm like, you realize how old the oldest millennial is, right? They're 42 years old.
Yeah.
So it wasn't the millennials. It was maybe the trailing edge millennials. But
I'm technically an exennial.
Oh, geez. Micro generations. So that was my topic because I wanted to know more about the generational differences within law enforcement. Now, I can tell you, when I was doing my research, there wasn't a whole lot of research or stuff that I could pull from law enforcement. It came from business, education, nursing, and get ready for this, construction.
Really?
Man, the field of construction, they're having such a hard time because people, I say kids, they don't want to go to work.
Right.
They don't want to, hammer and shovel and wheelbarrow dirt and stuff like that. So I got a tremendous amount of information from the construction field. And I ended up working with a doctor out of Copenhagen, Denmark, using a psychosocial questionnaire. And just modified it to meet the needs of my research, got permission and everything like that, and ended up writing about it. And I did find out that in law enforcement, I can't go beyond that because that's where my focus was, but the generation that causes the most problems is not millennials. It's Generation X.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's because when we were growing up, because I'm an Xer, we were independent.
Yeah.
We were latchkey kids. We saw the highest rates of divorce and separation. And, I just, you would leave in the morning and you better be home before the streetlights come on, and so that kind of environment just caused us to be super independent. So now we want it done our way or it's the highway.
Sure.
Whereas millennials and now post-millennials coming in,
Yeah, they hate that.
they do, they just leave me alone, let me do my job. But then with both, or at least with millennials, every once in a while you'll catch them looking back. And that means, hey, I'm doing my job. I feel like I'm doing a good job, but I need some affirmation.
Yeah.
Right? The whole trophy generation.
Yeah.
And you give them praise. You say, hey, you're doing a good job. You may want to try this. And when you're done, walk away. They don't want you hovering over them. They're just like, okay, I got this now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really fascinating that you bring that up because Jalen and I, we've talked a lot about that, in the business of Wheeler Home Team. we're always looking at, how do we do things better if we bring on another real estate agent or someone that's going to work on our behalf. Like, there's so many different generations, right? And so to lead them, to motivate them, to inspire them, you probably get that because you're seeing all different types of generations in law enforcement. It's really, really challenging to figure out what is their motivation and how can you lead them well that really inspires them to keep that drive going.
And you hit the nail on the head. You're saying that what do we have to do as leaders or, the generation that's watching other generations coming in, they're not going to change.
Right.
You have to change. You have to find those motivators. You have to find ways to keep them engaged because another aspect of the younger generations is if they're not getting fulfilled, they're bouncing.
Yeah.
Like
real
they don't
quick.
care. They're out.
We just learned that. We had brought on an individual. It was kind of experimental. We knew it was going to be a challenge to see if they could be successful at it. They knew that as well. And within 30 days, everyone kind of knew, that person knew, like, I don't really like this.
Yeah.
And we could tell too. I think different generations, maybe they push through that a little bit of like, hey, I'm going to work through this. I'm going to grind through this. I'm going to master this. It's just, it is really hard as a leader to figure all those things out.
Absolutely. But we have to.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we're going to take a short break, and then we'll be right back. I would love to talk more about your specific career in Liberty. We talked, we gave a little bit of tidbits of, Mosby in 2015 and all the things that you had going on when you moved here in 2012. But we would just love to get more specific in terms of your 10 years here in Liberty and what you love about it. So we'll be right back.
Hi, this is Chris Wheeler, owner of the Wheeler Home Team. Our desire is to be the most compelling real estate company in Kansas City. We seek creative solutions to combat a rapidly changing market. We know that now, more than ever, sellers will need our help to get top dollar for their home. That's why we created Seller's Corner. List your house with the Wheeler Home Team, and we will have you on this podcast, Paris of the Plains, to tell potential buyers about all things you love about your home. Then our team will post the link to your podcast episode right in your listing so that it can go to hundreds of potential buyers. List your home with us as we seek to enrich Kansas City through real estate. Call me at 816-562-9940 or check us out on our website, greaterkchomesearch.com.
Volume. And we're back with part 2 with Sheriff Will Akin. Thanks for staying with us. Thank you listeners for listening to our second part of the podcast. This part, we really want to get into your career in Liberty. I think an easy question is, you've been here for so long. Why do you continue to stay here? Why do you continue to do what you do, Will?
The Clay County Sheriff's Office is family to me. Our kind of like our unofficial motto is employee first. And there's a story during my campaign season leading up. It's about a week before the election. My wife and I got into a big blow-up fight. Oh, my gosh. Because there's a lot of stress involved in running a campaign.
That never happens in marriage, right?
But right. And I'm not immune to that either. We got into a big fight because she was like, why are you putting so much time and effort into this? Because, really, it's a sacrifice from family. It was a sacrifice in our relationship.
Yeah.
And finally, I just told her, I was like, she said, she goes, you're so marketable. And when she said that, it dawned on me that she's just looking at me. And when I told her, probably not the best way because we were fighting, but I told her, I was like, it's not about me. It's about the 230 employees in the Clay County Sheriff's Office, and it's about the 253,000 people in the county of Clay. I was like, it's about them. And so the reason why I do what I do is because I'm finally at the pinnacle of my career, but I'm able to make decisions based off of what I think is right, not for law enforcement, but in its entirety, because law enforcement's different on the East Coast and West Coast and the South and the North, but we're the Midwest. Yeah. And there's some pride to be had about being a resident of the Midwest part of the United States. but now I can make decisions based on what I feel is right. And I keep doing it because this is community. So I say the Clay County Sheriff's Office is my family, my extended family. And quite frankly, I probably spend more waking hours with my Clay County Sheriff's Office family than I do with my own family, right? But
I mean, that's part of it, though, right? That's part of the job.
Absolutely. And make no mistake, when you finally reach a chief of police position or a sheriff position, you are always working.
Yeah.
I mean, even when I take vacations to try to get away from it, I've got 2 phones.
And I remember that about my grandpa, kind of getting back to that story. I remember him always on call. We're in the backyard and we're playing. Always, cell phones weren't really a thing at that time, but he had one, a wall phone. And I just remember that thing ringing a lot. He'd come home for lunch. He had a very consistent routine, and he had to have that. He'd come home. He'd have lunch prepared. He always had a sandwich and chips, every single lunch. And, it was just unique. I remember seeing him as a young kid and thinking, man, that's such a cool job that my grandpa is the police chief, but so many people rely on him. And my grandma was so supportive of that. She knew not only was it, the way that he took care of the family, but he had a larger call of life of taking care of a whole community. And he was just so well respected. And what's fascinating is going back to El Dorado, Kansas now, people to this day will still see him, and he's a figure of that community, very well respected. His name's Victor Marshall. So, hey, Vic, everyone sees him. But you talk a lot about that in your role of, hey, I'm a community figure. I serve the people, right?
As sheriff, as an elected sheriff, my boss is the people. And whenever I make a decision, I have to be prepared for the scrutiny that comes with that decision, because inevitably someone will be offended by the decisions that I make. And it's not because I'm trying to isolate one group over another, but I have to look at it from a holistic view of I serve the people. And the people is a very diverse group within Clay County. And when I was running, people would always ask me what my partisanship was, and I'm not afraid of saying that I'm a Republican, but I am excited to say now that I think the only nonpartisan sheriff in the state of Missouri now, because the people voted for the Constitution, Clay County's Constitution, back in 2020, which makes all county level government or county level officials nonpartisan.
Right.
Wow.
And when I was running, people would say, well, are you a Democrat or a Republican? And we would finally get to that. But I would always lead with, well, for me, it doesn't really matter, because when you call 911, my dispatchers don't say, 911, what's your party affiliation? They say, what's your emergency? Where are you located? Well, give me some details so we can get you help.
Right.
And so that's the way I look at it. Like I serve everyone. And there have been times where people ask me, Will, why did you take that stance? Whether it's for my party, against my party. And I'm just like, because it's the right thing to do. And, but it's interesting to have to navigate all that.
Sure. Well, I had the opportunity to vote for you.
Thank you.
And I did. Because your social media was really huge for me to watch from a distance. But what I really appreciated about it was I felt you were very genuine. There were other people running, obviously, but I felt like I could trust you. I felt like you were going to be loyal to the community. I felt like you were going to make the right decisions when they were needed, right?
And right decisions also means unpopular decisions.
Right.
But you know what? I feel like that level of responsibility, I bear that level of responsibility because the people trust me. And talk about social media. I love and hate social media at the same
Likewise.
time. I think it's necessary, especially for me as an elected official, because I want people to know who I am. I'm the sheriff. My office is in Liberty, but I'm a resident of Liberty. I want people to know who I am, and that's where I put my life out there. I've got my website. I've got Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, LinkedIn. I'm all over. But I also want people to know that at the end of the day, when I take this uniform off, I'm just Will. I'm your neighbor. I'm a dad. I'm a husband. I'm also the post commander of the VFW Post 4043 in Liberty. I'm an American Legion member. I'm a Rotary member. There's just so many things that I want to do to kind of give back to my community. But most importantly for me is to be a part of the community.
Yeah.
Well, Will, I think that there are probably some listeners who didn't even know, like, you are an elected official, and this might tie into your career, coming here from 2012 to 10 years later now where you are. But how does a person get to your position? I mean, because I think there's probably some misconceptions that you're just a cop, or you're just a cop, and then you got promoted internally within the police structure or whatever it is, and then now you're here as the top cop. But there's actually, the public has a say. And can you speak to that process and specifically how you went through that process? Because I don't think some people probably don't know.
And you're kind of talking a little bit about the hierarchy of, here's the police structure, here's the sheriff structure.
Yeah.
Yes. So that's a great question. When I first came here, I told Paul that I would only be here for as long as he was here.
Okay.
And then I was going to move on. Like, my aspirations were to be a police chief somewhere. And he finally told me a couple years, it was probably 1 year, about a year and a half into his second term, the second time. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
But he said, "Hey, Will, I'm done. I'm going to retire."
Okay.
And I was like, "Well, thanks for the heads up. I guess I'll start
What year
looking."
is this approximately?
2017.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I go, "Okay, well, thanks for the heads up, because now it's time for me to start looking for a job." And he goes, "No." He goes, "I think you need to reconsider."
Okay.
And I go, "Reconsider what?" And he looks at me and I was like, "Oh, no. No. Because what goes into becoming sheriff is an actual campaign."
Yeah.
And it almost feels wrong for a law enforcement professional to be a politician, because you have to be a politician, but you also have to be as a sheriff, the chief executive law enforcement official in the county.
Yeah.
And I can understand the struggle with that, because it's like, well, you could be a great individual that campaigns really well. You sell the goods, man. But are you going to be a good sheriff, though?
Right.
Right? But you could be the opposite and be like, hey, he's a heck of a sheriff, but man, he's not a great public speaker, or he's not going to campaign well. It seemed like the great thing for you is you had both going for you, but you're probably struggling with that a little bit of like, oh, I've got to campaign a little bit.
Oh, man, I hate asking people for money. And it takes money in order to run a campaign.
Yeah.
Now, I will tell you that I think I can count on one hand the amount of people, maybe 6 people, that gave me over $1,000 that contributed to my campaign. The rest of it was like $100, $20, $50. And I love that, because I remember hearing a political consultant say one time that if you want the people to know who you are, don't go for the deep pocket donors. Go to the people who can barely afford to give you $20, because if they give you $20, they believe in you.
Right. Yeah.
And when I heard that, I was like, man, in order for me to get $20 from somebody who probably can't afford $20 to go to a political as a political contribution, then I need to go out there and put myself out there and let people know who I am and start building that trust. But 2 years of campaigning.
Was that a lot of door knocking?
No, actually, I don't knock on doors.
Okay.
I don't knock on doors because I'm the guy in safety presentations saying, "Stop answering your doors to strangers." So how contradictory would that be?
Yeah, for sure.
Make an exception for me because I'm running for office, and I want to tell you who I am.
That's funny. Walk us through your strategy a little bit. Like, what did that campaign strategy look like?
So campaign strategy was social media.
Okay.
But it was also during COVID.
Oh.
And man, that changed the landscape.
Game changer.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. But now people ask me, they're like, "Will, what should I do?" And I'm like, social media. Yeah, go out there and knock on doors, I guess, if you want to. I will never knock on doors because I'm the one that says, stop answering the door, strangers. Scam artists come up, people who want to take a look inside your house and then
the solar panel guys.
Oh, well, yeah, there's a lot of industries, but my strategy was social media, but then also going out there and being involved in as many events as possible. And I always told myself that, okay, I have to, if I get elected, I have to be able to sustain that, because I don't want to go out there and be, hey, this is who I am, and then all of a sudden, poof, disappear.
Yeah.
And then when it comes time to get elected again, oh, hey, here I am, everyone. Please, reelect me.
And that's pretty common.
Oh, absolutely. But I will tell you, being the sheriff, I thought I had a good grasp on what it was like to be the sheriff. But when I got elected, and I think it was the first week of being in office, like everything now comes to me. And I was just like, what the heck? And I actually called Paul up one time and I said, Paul, did you do anything as sheriff? And he started laughing and he goes, son, let me tell you. He goes, it's something different every day. And I said, how come you never like exposed me to that? Because I thought you like exposed me to everything. And he goes, no. He goes, there were some things that I just didn't want you to have to worry about.
Yeah.
And now I understand why.
And do you kind of do the same thing? Do you protect some of your staff of like, hey, maybe this is something you don't need to be a part of?
Absolutely. And not because I don't trust my staff.
Sure.
I have an amazing staff. Like wow, we are rock stars. I'm a little biased, but we do really good work. But it's because I don't want to overstress them.
Sure.
There's enough stress as it is that I don't want to have to expose them to something that's really not relevant to them and their duties and responsibilities. And I think I've done a really good job to explain to them that if I don't tell you, it's not because I don't like you. It's just, I don't think you need to know this. Like, let me be the one to bear that responsibility. But rest assured, when I think that you need to know, I'm going to be calling you into my office and I'm going to share it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, kind of going into the story that we're going into with you transitioning to sheriff. You mentioned that your previous boss, hadn't shared all the details of the job. What's been the most surprising part of this job for you?
So it's not the job. It's not being a cop or in law enforcement. It's being able to manage 230 personalities.
Okay.
Holy cats. Man, everyone's different. And I love all of them for it, right? Because that's, for me, diversity comes from not the skin of your, the color of your skin or your background. It's who you are. It's what you have to offer our organization. But man, we are so diverse.
I bet.
So 2 weeks ago, I implemented a full-scale organizational restructure. And I dissolved an entire division.
Wow.
I dissolved 2 units and a position. Oh my gosh. I had people submit their resignations. I had people threatening to submit their resignations. And I'm just like, sorry, but as the sheriff of this organization, basically as the CEO of this organization, our business practices have to make sense.
Yeah.
And I have to make business decisions.
That's a really hard decision because it involves people that you care about.
Oh my gosh. And that's what stressed me out the most was the impact on our employees. We are already the lowest paid law enforcement agency in the KC metro area.
Really?
Oh gosh, yeah.
That's surprising to me.
Oh my gosh. So our starting salary right now is $41,000 a year. Gladstone just announced $54,000 a year. KCK is offering, I think, $70,000 a year if you have 3 years of experience. And I can go into all the other law enforcement agencies in the area that are just bumping it up to the 50s, right?
Yeah.
But how am I going to, that's a whole nother, topic about, the challenges of being in law enforcement today. But I have to be able to manage the culture for our 230 employees because they certainly aren't getting paid appropriately and they could very well go to another organization. Now, if that happens, that cascades into the services that we provide our community.
Yeah.
And the lack thereof.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right? Because if I don't have the people, then we can't do the job. Or we still do the job, but it's going to take a couple days longer than a 30-minute response.
Yeah.
And that's just not fair to our community.
So what would be the attraction? You got a cop coming out of school and he's looking at KCK or Gladstone and saying, hey, I can get 10 to 20K more over there. What's the value proposition that you're saying, this is why you need to be a part of my team?
Yeah. So I think what we have to offer as the Clay County Sheriff's Office is opportunity. You go to a police department, you have 2 tracks, pretty much 2 tracks. You have patrol, you have investigations. There might be some specialty units as the organization gets larger, like Kansas City PD. They have a lot of other specialized units. But at the Sheriff's Office, so we are the largest law enforcement agency north of the river. And I still have 5 divisions. I have, oh my gosh, I've never thought about it, but like how many different units? We have patrol, we have investigations, we have detention, we have court security, we have sex offender registration, we have civil unit. We have so many other opportunities. Not to mention, when you start in detention as a civilian employee, we'll sponsor you to go to the academy. Now you kind of have to do your time because there are a lot of people who are committed, and we have to be fair to send them first if they want to go. But then when you go from detention to sworn, so non-sworn to sworn, those doors of opportunity swing open, and now they have the entire organization to choose from.
Sure.
And they don't have to stay in one spot, like patrol for 25 years or investigations for 15 years because they were in patrol first and then they switched over. They can rotate through.
And I imagine with the generations that we've been talking about, especially the younger generation, they're looking for opportunity. They probably don't want to stay in that position like many cops may have of like, yeah, I'm going to stay in this job for 20 years, right? It's like, hey, what's next? What's next? Where's that next open door? Is that right?
Oh my gosh, yes. So when we get new employees coming in, they're not looking so much at benefits. They're not looking at, oddly enough, pay isn't even on the top one. It's kind of like that work-life balance, right? They want to be able to go to work and then go home and spend time with their families or spend time with their friends and stuff. They don't want to have to work 18-hour shifts because we're short-staffed.
Yeah.
Which leads to burnout. And with the younger generations, when they reach that burnout, like they don't tolerate it like the older generations. They just go, this isn't for me. I'm out.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It is. I love studying generations. It's interesting to look at my dad's generation. My dad's almost 60, and he's going to retire probably the next few years. And he has stayed in the same industry, the same company for 35 years. And a lot of that he's never liked. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he's just that type of guy that's just like, hey, this is what provides for my family. This is what I do.
Yeah.
Right. He takes the role of being a leader of the family more important than, hey, I love or I hate my job. It's kind of like that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Right. And so some parts of his job he's really loved, but a lot of it he hasn't. And I respect the crap out of him for doing that. But the generation today, that's very hard to come by.
But that's also the reason why, when we were talking earlier, we have to find ways to keep them engaged. When I say that the community is also my family, this is my community, not just Liberty, but all of Clay County, and in some regards, all of the Kansas City metro area.
Yeah.
By state region, right? But I always look for opportunities to get our employees engaged in community activities, like trunk or treat.
Yeah.
We had between 3,000 and 4,000 people show up to the Clay County Sheriff's Office
so
trunk
cool.
or treat.
Wow. I love hearing that.
We had to make three emergency runs for more candy because we were running out.
Okay. Wow.
Stuff like that. National Night Out, Fall Fest, different parades. Oh, parades. Oh, my gosh. I used to make so much fun of Paul because he hated being in parades. And then last year when all the parades were coming up, the Fall Fests and Glad Fest and all that, my staff said, okay, what do you want to ride in? Do you want to ride in an Explorer? Do you want to ride in the back of the truck? I'm like, for what? And they're like, the parade. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to do that. And they were like, yes, you are. And I was like, oh, my gosh. So I remember the first parade in Kearney, Jesse James days. People on the sides of the road were like saying, oh, my gosh, that's the sheriff. The sheriff's actually here. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, man, this isn't about me.
Yeah.
It's about the community.
Yeah.
So now every opportunity to be in a parade, I'm in the back of one of our F-150s, and I'm waving hands.
Yeah.
My grandpa was in Shriners, and so he rode those little motorcycles.
Oh, yeah.
But he was in every parade in El Dorado, Kansas, and so we would kind of hop over there. And I do remember seeing him, and people just like that saying, oh, that's the police chief. And I was like, oh, that's my grandpa. That's cool.
I like it when we have like a quote unquote army of volunteers behind the truck handing out candy and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And we have T-shirts made up of like the Clay County Sheriff's Office with our mission statement on the back, and so that way people see that it's not just my employees, but it's my employees' families who volunteer their time. Because when I say employee first, I extend that to their families too. And being able to change the culture is an ever-going effort.
Yeah.
But people now will come to me with a problem, and they'll say something to the effect that I don't have enough time to take off. I can't take care of that problem. So it's really stressing me out. And I just say, go ahead and go. And they go, well, no, I don't have the time. And I go, no, I'm giving you the time. I'm giving you admin time to go and take care of whatever it is that's stressing you out at home, and that you bring that to work. And now you're not, your head's not in the game.
Yeah.
And man, that's been huge for employees.
Well, especially in your guys' career field, you've got to be on point, right? You got to have your game face on 24/7, and so if they're not right at the job, I think that's awesome that you're taking notice of that and saying, "Hey, go home, get your mind right, spend some time with the family, come back, get your game face back on."
Absolutely, because if we don't do that, our employees are going to continue to leave our organization, and it's just going to continue to hamstring us as far as staffing goes. I was that guy early on in my career that said, oh, when I come to work, I just flip the switch. I leave stuff at home, and then I come to work. Whatever. That's impossible. Physiologically and mentally, that is impossible to flip that proverbial switch, right?
Yeah.
Whatever you have going on at home, you're going to bring to work, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So if we don't start taking care of our employees' mental health and wellness, then we're just going to further complicate the staffing issues that we have, the retention issues that we have. And let's face it, if we don't have a reputation before people even come to work for us, we're going to continue to have hiring issues.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah, it sounds like you just know you have a good holistic view of people as a whole person, right? You're not only your employees, but you're also understanding how the community views you. How the community of Clay County says, hey, here's a sheriff. Here's how he, when I see him involved in these community events, how that makes you feel. So it just sounds like all of these, experiences that you've had kind of contribute to that. So just to kind of round out the episode, what do you see in the next, 5, 10 years for Clay County, for the Clay County Sheriff's Office, for, just the future of that? What are your hopes? What are your aspirations? What challenges do you see?
Yeah, so one of the big things that's always in my mind, like my biggest concern, is the reputation of not just the Clay County Sheriff's Office, but for law enforcement.
Okay.
So whenever I don this uniform, it's not about the Clay County Sheriff's Office. I mean, yes, it is, because I have the badge, I've got the shoulder patches. But when people see me, I want them to see a positive light in law enforcement, because they don't. When you look at somebody, you just think of them, oh, that's another cop. But you don't know what city they're from. You don't know what county they're from. Their uniforms might look differently. So I will continue to engage the community. We are not a secret organization. If you want to do a ride along with us, man, I highly encourage
Let's do it.
you. Yeah,
that'd be cool.
Oh my gosh, that'd be awesome. Have you guys come out and then talk about your experience.
Can we do a live podcast in the back of the vehicle?
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Let's
like a
talk
part
about
2.
that.
That'd be awesome.
So I will definitely put you in touch with my PR manager, Sarah Boyd, and I'm always open to ideas like that.
Facebook Live, baby. Let's go.
Yeah. I don't know about Facebook Live because there's some rules in the Missouri statutes that, but we do tweet-alongs, right? So we blast information out, but nothing compares to you actually being in the car with the deputy responding to a call for service. So we're not a secret organization. I invite everyone to come in. I will give you a tour myself if I'm available. I'll have one of my staff members do it. You can talk to anyone who you want. I just want people to know who their sheriff's office is. Now, we will always have our challenges, right? We're not perfect. We will mess up. We will end up on Fox 4. And if you don't know what happened at Fox 4 displayed a couple months ago, then we'll just leave it alone.
Okay.
But what I do want is for people to understand that since we are not perfect, when we do mess up, that they have enough trust in the sheriff's office that we will take care of it, we'll address it, and make sure that we implement mechanisms that will prevent it from happening again. Right? And we'll learn from it and we'll move on. So just continuing to be open to the public, and just if you have any questions, I am so easily accessible. Right, Chris, you reached out to me on Facebook Messenger and was like, hey, would you like to do this? And I was
Very
like,
quick.
heck yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I tell you, a lot of people reach out to me on DMs, and I don't plan on changing that because I work for the people, right? I want to be there for the people. Now, with that being said, a lot of people reach out to me, and it may not be as quickly as how I responded to you, but I will eventually get back to you. But then also, we have, I try to say this as unbiased as possible. We have one of the best sheriff's offices in the state of Missouri. We have one of the best sheriffs in the state of Missouri. And that's not me saying that, that's other people saying that. So I will continue to do my best to make the Clay County Sheriff's Office what people expect it to be, and will always be open to opinions and some ideas. And I just want people to be involved with us.
Yeah, it really makes me feel good to be a community member of Liberty, knowing that you're leading the sheriff's department. You know, just having you on here, listening to how you approach things, your genuineness, the trust that I have in you. I feel like my family's in really safe arms with your leadership. So really appreciate that about you. Appreciate the time that you took to come on to our podcast. So thank you very much.
Man, thank you. You guys, I love people who do podcasts because it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, but the information that comes from it is extremely valuable to the people who listen to it. So I thank you for giving me the opportunity to give you some of my time and be on the show with you guys. So thanks.
Yeah, of course.